Welcome back everyone. We're going to be doing another comparison this time around between the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 6T. Now both of these phones obviously are from the OnePlus lineup, the OnePlus 8 being the newest one, and the OnePlus 8 price wise is starting at $699 for some models, but it's cost $799 for the base model or for the model that I bought, which is I think the more top tier model. I think there's also an $899 model, and then obviously we have the OnePlus 8 Pros as well. But the OnePlus 6T does not cost the same price that it cost when it first came out. That phone cost about $300 to pick up on Amazon right now, which is pretty insane. And the OnePlus 6T is still a tremendous phone in my opinion. It has a lot of value still, and I think for what you're getting, the OnePlus 6T is probably a better value per dollar, but the OnePlus 8 is the better phone overall. So that's kind of how I would sum up this video, to be honest. So if you don't want to see more in-depth a comparison or whatever, then you guys can leave now, but I'll leave both of these phones a link down in the description below so you guys can get them from there and from Amazon and help support the channel at the same time. Now looking on the front, we'll go ahead and start off with the OnePlus 6T since it is the older phone. We have a 6.41 inch 1080p optic AMOLED display, and it's a pretty good panel. I think even at that point when I first bought it, which was I think last year I bought it and then I returned it and I never made a video of it, but then I rebought it recently, and I think the panel on this thing is really good. Before I even picked it up, I thought it probably was a 1440p display, but honestly, like I've stated before, I think OnePlus does a really good job on their panels. It looks really good, the colors are very great, and because it is an AMOLED, I think it just makes it that much better. Now you do have, a little bit of bezel on the bottom, which is literally nothing nowadays, to be honest. You have that teardrop type of design at the top, which is really cool, and I think overall the front of it looks really, really good. I think there's obviously some things that could have changed. Obviously with the OnePlus 8 we have that whole punch display, but I think the front of the OnePlus 6T has definitely held up very well, and I think if you pick up this phone, the last thing you're going to think about is, oh my god, this thing has that teardrop front camera thing, or this thing has a bigger chin. Like, it doesn't really matter. They're so small that you don't even really remember them, to be honest. So in terms of the front, the OnePlus 6T looks really good. However, the OnePlus 8 is the better looking panel, to be honest. So we have a 6.55 inch fluid AMOLED display. This panel is also 1080p. They have the same exact pixels per inch between both of these, which is really funny. And obviously with the OnePlus 8 you have a little bit of a bigger panel, but you also do have the whole punch display on the top left, which does kind of look good. I like the way this phone looks and feels and everything. Now obviously if you have the choice, getting the OnePlus 8's display would probably do you better. It looks much better, but on top of that, there's a really cool advantage with the OnePlus 8's display, and that is actually the 90Hz refresh rate on that panel, and the OnePlus 6T doesn't have it. The OnePlus 7 Pro eventually got it, and that's a really cool feature that the OnePlus 8 has. If you guys don't know, basically it just kind of smoothens out the display. It really doesn't add to anything crazy, to be honest. It's not like a crazy feature, but it just smooths out the display, which is really cool. And I think that's honestly one of my favorite features of this phone. So for sure, at the end of the day, the OnePlus 8's display is better than the OnePlus 6T's, not because of the way it looks or anything, but because of that 90Hz refresh rate in and of itself. So on the bottom, they both have USB Type-C ports, and on the back, a little bit of a different setup. So we have glass backs on both, dual camera setup on the 6T, triple camera setup on the OnePlus 8. Now here's a very important thing to keep in mind. The back texture of both these phones are a little bit different. So if you've ever used an iPhone 11 Pro or 11 Pro Max, that matte texture on the matte glass on the back of those is kind of what the OnePlus 8 is feeling like. You know what I mean? I think it looks and feels really good now. I used to not like it, but now I like it. But the OnePlus 6T has that standard glass back that if you ever used any glass back on a phone, that's pretty much what it feels like. So a little bit of a difference there, nothing too insane, but again, something to consider at the end of the day. And in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it up for the most part. When I'm feeling both in the hand, one doesn't necessarily blow the other one out of the water, but definitely I'll probably tell you the OnePlus 8 is probably the better feeling phone at the end of the day. So that pretty much covers it up there. Now hitting on the software, this is where things get a little bit different. So the OnePlus 8 obviously just got started with updates. It's starting off with Android 10. It has Oxygen OS, which is, like I've stated before, is one of my favorite versions of Android. Where the OnePlus 6T started off with Android Pie. It is going to be getting Android 10, and as far as we know, it's probably going to be getting Android 11, and then it might stop at Android 11. With the whole 6 series of devices, we have the OnePlus 6 and the 6T. Those came out the same year, and as far as we know, that's kind of what the deal is right now. Now again, things could change. This phone could get an extra version of software, but the software within these phones is so good, and I believe there's still a pretty big community behind the development community behind it. So even when these phones get stop getting supported, you can always still go and customize around them, which is really cool. And that's a huge plus for the OnePlus 6T and the OnePlus 8 as well. So I think between both, the OnePlus 8 is probably going to obviously, outlast the OnePlus 6T by, a couple years within software support. But the OnePlus 6T, is still going to be ending off on a pretty good version of software too. So between both, I'll definitely tell you, both have a really great software. That's one of my biggest advantages for both of these and for picking up a OnePlus phone in general. Very low background processes. It's not bulky. It's not that very glitchy either. So definitely when it comes down to it, both of them have very good software. It's just that the OnePlus 8 is probably going to be outlasting the OnePlus 6T. So in terms of software, that pretty much covers it. Now hitting on the performance. Now I'll tell you the specs and I'll kind of go more in a little bit in detail. The OnePlus 6T came with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 630 GPU. And there were a couple different models of this. The base model was 6 gigs of RAM, a mid-tier model with 8, and a top-tier model with 8 gigs of RAM as well, where the OnePlus 8 has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 650 GPU, and the base model with 8 gigs of RAM, and the top-tier model with 12 gigs of RAM. And when it comes down to the performance, I think the OnePlus 6T is still a very, very good performing phone for the most part. And whenever I was using it, for lower intensive things, if I was just going through the software and kind of loading up apps here and there, it handled that perfectly fine. With Android 10, we have that new gesture system, which really just adds so much more, I don't know what it is. It just makes the phone feel so much more modern than constantly having to click the navbar buttons. And the gesture system on the OnePlus 6T was really good when I was using it, and it makes the phone feel super fluid, super nice overall. And, mid-tier apps, loading up Snapchat, Temporal, whatever like that was perfectly fine too. And even heavier intensive games like Real Racing 3 and different things like that ran perfectly fine on the OnePlus 6T for the most part, which is a humongous plus, and I really do like that. Where the OnePlus 8, definitely takes that to another level. With the additional RAM and with the newer chipsets, you're definitely getting a speed increase for sure. So going from a OnePlus 6T to a OnePlus 8, you're definitely going to be seeing some speed increases, but I don't know. I don't think it's something that's going to be all up in your face. I think the OnePlus 6T was a very smooth device, and I think the OnePlus 8, is a little bit smoother, but I really don't think you're going to notice it too much in my opinion. I don't know, maybe it's just me. When I was loading up those smaller apps, obviously I handled it fine. Mid-tier apps perfectly fine, even heavier intensive apps, it loads things perfectly fine too. But I think the biggest advantage that the OnePlus 8 actually has would be that 90Hz refresh rate, which really has nothing to do with the performance, but it just makes the phone feel that much faster and that much smoother. So when I had it disabled, I really couldn't really, I knew it was faster, but I couldn't really, see it on a day by day unless I was comparing them side by side. But once I enabled that, that's when you start seeing some really huge speed increases. And it's not even, it's like a placebo effect. The phone itself isn't faster, but it just looks faster, you know what I mean? So I think for sure at the end of the day, the OnePlus 8 has a humongous advantage of that, but the OnePlus 6T is still a perfectly good performing phone for the most part, and I think for a majority of you, you're going to be perfectly fine with that type of performance. So in terms of the performance side of things, that really pretty much covers it. Now hitting on the cameras, the OnePlus 6T had a 16 megapixel wide angle lens and a 20 megapixel wide angle lens as well, where the OnePlus 8 has a 48 megapixel wide angle lens, a 16 megapixel ultra wide sensor, then a 2 megapixel macro lens, and both phones can do 4K 60, which is really cool. But definitely at the end of the day, the OnePlus 8 has the better camera setup, but both these cameras are actually kind of in the same ballpark. I think OnePlus really needs to start focusing in on their cameras. I feel like they're kind of in that league of, Nexus lineup back in the day. Eventually when they switched over to the Pixel lineup, their cameras started getting better, but the Nexus lineup, they were struggling with their cameras for a while, and I think that's what OnePlus is doing now too. Their cameras are good, but they're definitely not top tier or going to beat any records or anything like that in my opinion. So when it comes down to that, I think the camera is better on the OnePlus 8, but that's not really saying much. On the front, the same 16 megapixel sensors. Like I stated, I don't know what OnePlus's fascination with the 16 megapixel sensor. They've been using it for so long. They need to switch it up at some point, but it is what it is. I'll probably still give the edge to the OnePlus 8. Now ending it off with the battery life, the OnePlus 6T has a 3700 mAh battery. The OnePlus 8 has a 4300 mAh battery. And I think between both, OnePlus has really gotten in the, mode of, increasing the size of their batteries, which is really cool. And that 4300 mAh battery within the OnePlus 8 is really, really good. And I think that's a humongous advantage for the OnePlus 8. And between both, I'll definitely tell you the battery life is going to be better on the OnePlus 8 than the OnePlus 6T for sure. So to kind of sum up this video and to answer the comparison, should you pick up the OnePlus 8? Should you pick up a OnePlus 6T? Which one should you do? In my opinion, I think you would probably be better off picking up a OnePlus 8 if you have all the money in the world. If you're not literally strapped for cash or anything, getting a OnePlus 8 will probably do you better in the long run. But the OnePlus 6T is still a tremendous device for the money I mean, this phone costs less than half of a brand new OnePlus 8, and I think you're not getting like half the performance or half the features or anything. You're getting almost the same exact phone in a lot of ways. The OnePlus 8 is better, but I think the OnePlus 6T still has a lot of value, and it's still a tremendous phone. Whether you're, wanting a basic phone or you're wanting a top tier phone, the OnePlus 6T is still a tremendous pickup in my opinion. So that really pretty much covers it. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys get hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.